Swinburne University of Technology.
You can read it, I don't need to say it. So essentially I've had a lot of experience in this area. I've been through the higher ed, having taken about 7 years to do a double degree. And the reason I'm quite passionate about this is because I've been a student, and I'm quite keen to help lecturers certainly make things more engaging for the students. So my background is I'm an educator, like many of you. I'm also an instructional designer, computer programmer, and project management. So based on all those skills, pretty much what I want to do really quickly is run a half-day workshop in 20 minutes. So, and the idea of it is, you know what a flipped classroom is. So what we really want to do is whet your appetite. And what we want to do is say, well, if you're thinking of going to the flipped classroom approach, how's that different to what you're doing now? And really, we're going to do an exercise in a minute that's going to look at what happens now, what can happen in the flipped classroom, and then hopefully just doing that, you'll be able to gauge, as we've already seen from what we've just seen, some of the benefits around the flipped classroom. Just building on what was said before in terms of student engagement, the literature actually says for subjects that are introductory subjects, because students aren't aware of the content or don't have a passion about the subject, that's generally why they like the proper lectures, as opposed to the flipped classroom approach, which seems to have a better take-up in the second, third, fourth years. Okay, so really what we want to focus on is how can we articulate the interaction activities of teachers and learners. And in a moment, there's going to be 4 tables. I know there's 6, but I've only got enough things for 4. It's a huge group, which is great. And what we're going to do is quickly look at this model. And really what we want to focus on is these 8 learning events and just use them to look at the interactions that you're currently having in your units. So what we want to do, these are the 8 learning events here, and we're just going to focus on these. So creates, experiments, debates, receives, meta-learns, explores, practices, imitates. How many of those different learning events are you currently undertaking in your units? That's what we're going to look at first. We're then going to take the flipped classroom approach and revisit that. Along with that are some learning verbs, but I'm not going to go through that. So in a moment, John is going to go around and give you a pack of these cards. There's some butcher's papers on the table, and what I want you to do is just rule a line down the middle, and John will give you these cards and we'll work through it. So we really want to focus on what happens now. So I've just gone to the Swinburne website. I've picked out some units of study that are here. And what I've done with those units is I've identified the teaching methods. So as you get organised, what we can see with these teaching methods, these are generally the contact hours that students have. And this looks all so familiar for me. So really what we want to do with this exercise is pick a unit. So in the group, I know we're all from different areas, but what I want we to do is focus on the lecture that you currently do, and with the cards, in terms of the learning events, describe the interaction that you have with your students in a typical lecture situation. Just put the cards down on one half of the paper and just write the type of interactions that you have. So for example, one of the cards says receives. So I would say that a typical lecture, based on my experience in the class, would be around receiving information. in a typical lecture. So I would put that down on one side as something that tells me or provides me with a trigger of what happens in my current lectures that I give. Now there may be other cards that you can relate to. If so, just put them down on one side of the paper, and for a couple of minutes just write down the sort of activities that you're engaged with your students in a lecture. Just have a couple of minutes on that. Okay, just to pull everything back together for a moment. Looking at most of you for a lecture situation, it doesn't have to be me up the front talking. I always have a lot of interaction in my lectures, which some of you may do as well. But in terms of what you currently do, how many of those cards are you incorporating into what you currently do now? Oh, you've got one? Okay. What about in the back corner?
Well, we were the small, because none of us were.
Oh, okay.
But I think, no, we are,
Yeah.
In classes, we're not doing
Okay, that's fine.
We incorporate quite a lot of
Excellent.
to a certain degree.
Okay, that's good. How about the front here? How many do you incorporate?
4,
4, so about half.
some degree or other.
Excellent. And here at the front?
I think we made the argument that we do probably all of these things explicitly, with the possible exception of this meta-learning one, except the question is how much do we do them? And most of these things, other than receiving
Yep.
a lot of buy-in from the students, so we do them, but that's it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
No, so that's good. So what I wanted to really do from that exercise is just focus on what you currently do. And now what we want to do is consider the same scenario, but instead of the lecture, we're going to replace it with the flipped classroom. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, for me, there's really 3 significant things that you need to know about the flipped classroom. Number 1, it really rearranges how time is spent both in and out of the classroom. So that's the critical thing you need to think about. The second thing, it's that shift in ownership of learning from educators to the students. So the students are doing more. So that's the first 2 things. All this will be available after. The third thing and key is a shift from passive to active learning. That's really the key, because students are going to focus on a lot of the higher order thinkings. So if you take the Bloom's taxonomy, which everyone's familiar with, we're actually doing more. As you can see here, that's what the traditional would be. In the flipped, it's totally different. They spend more time in that deeper learning. And that's really what we want to achieve with the flipped classroom. I had a basic picture compared to the one you did, but it's more about this active engagement. So that's what I want you to focus on now. So in the flipped classroom, let's take that example of the lecture. We're throwing that out. What can we replace it with instead? So with those cards, again, use them as triggers to say, I would like to do these types of things in the class, and see what you come up with. In addition, try put some activities next to them as well. So for example, if you're going to use some sort of polling technology in the classroom, if you're going to invite in a guest speaker to do some stuff, or maybe your students are going to do some presentation stuff as well. So come up with some ideas on what approach can you take as a group, replacing that lecture. What approach can you use using the flipped classroom? And hopefully those cards will sort of trigger. We might try and bring things back together in the last 5 minutes, because I know you're itching to get back to class. So just briefly, in contrast to the first one, can you find that you're perhaps using more of those events than what you did in the first? And if so, that's really what the literature tells you that you're doing. And that's really where you want to get to in terms of your classroom. So in summary, this is really what you're finding with the flipped classroom. You all are around learning through activity. This is probably what you're finding. The fact that you're using more of those cards in the second activity tells you that suddenly you're doing more through learning in activities and things. So when I was in at a university where we had a 1 hour lecture and a 2 hour tutorial, we changed that to a 3 hour tutorial. We got rid of the lecture completely and used this flipped classroom approach because we did a lot of learning through activity. And you'll also note that if you're going to have this, you also need the education technology to support that. And obviously that's where Blackboard comes in. But in addition to that, there are other tools that are around as well, as has already been shown. In fact, I get a lot of my tools from my kids. I have 3 in high school and 1 in year 6, and they're just gurus with apps. So they're creating a lot of videos and things just through free apps on their devices and submitting that as homework. So you can use that technology that's available, learn, which is what you have is a good way to keep a lid on it, control it. And so with the flipped classroom, yes, it uses technology, yes, it provides opportunities through learning, through activity, but both of those together are really going to impact the learning environment. When we talk about education technologies, I just had a little think about 5 minutes before I came in and just thought about what technologies Swinburne already has in terms of around the Blackboard. And for each of those learning events, I was able to, from the tools that are available in Learn and Collaborate, suddenly align these with a lot of the learning events. So you already have the tools available. It's just how do we actually use them more effectively in the classroom or out of it. And that's really the challenge that I'm going to put to you, is to for some of you to take up the challenge to implement a flipped classroom approach, spend the rest of this year designing and developing that classroom with the aim of delivering it in 2015. I'm also prepared to help and mentor anyone that wants to take that on.
Okay, you're mine.
I wasn't thinking that quickly, but if anyone likes the challenge of doing that, I'm happy to work with you for the rest of the year and next year to make that happen. And essentially, I think that's all I had. In terms of some really useful links, I don't mind being busy. These are some really great links. There's a research on flipped learning. That's really good. A lot of good research papers supporting exactly what was said in the first session, supports a lot of what we said now. Macquarie, if you want more examples of what Lyndon did this morning, these are a couple of staff explaining their adventure through the flipped classroom. Same with Queensland, and the Chronicle of Higher Education has stacks of people doing that as well. That's pretty much it.
This has been a Swinburne production.